Children, as you know that there are 4 steps to maintain a particular ecosystem. First one is the productivity, the second is decomposition, third is transfer of energy, and the fourth one is the nutrient cycle. So we have completed the first one, the productivity. Now we'll move on to the next one, that is decomposition. So you all know that the role of decomposition is the returning back of the nutrients from the bodies of the plants and the animals and the organism back to the environment, maybe to the air, maybe to the soil, so that they get replenished and the nutrients can again go back to the plant for the regulation of life on the surface of earth. So decomposition takes place a very important role in regulating the life on the earth, because they keep on returning the nutrients which have been taken from the soil earlier by the plants. So decomposition can be defined as a process where the complex organic substance is converted into simple inorganic substance with the help of decomposers. For example, sugar. The sugar is converted into carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and the proteins which are present in our body are converted into carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen. So they are returned back to the environment. Now this process of decomposition takes place everywhere, and it is done with the help of the decomposers, and the bacteria and the fungi, they fall in the category of the decomposers. And all the dead organism, whether it is plant or animal or any other organism, that constitute the detritus. So, and the organism which feeds upon the detritus is called detrivore, just as the terms herbivore, carnivore, and omnivore is there. So there is one more term called detrivore, and the dead organism is called as detritus, and the one which feeds upon it is called detrivores. Now come on to the process of decomposition. Decomposition involves certain steps, and first step is the fragmentation, the second step is the leaching, the third step is the catabolism, the fourth step is the humification, and the fifth step is the mineralization. So these are the 5 steps of decomposition. The first one is fragmentation. Fragmentation is where the dead organisms are converted into fragments by the detrivores, the organism which feeds upon the dead organism. It can be the vultures, it can be the earthworm also, it can be the wood louse also. So they feed upon and they convert them into fragments. So that process is called fragmentation. Then comes the leaching. Leaching is a process where the dissolved components of the dead organism, they go deep inside the soil after getting dissolved in water. Once again, leaching is a process where the soluble components of the detritus, yani dead organism, it seeps down inside the soil with the help of water. So water soluble substance which go down, they get converted into precipitate. So generally they are not available for the plant. So they remain there for a longer period of time. That is leaching. Then comes the catabolism. Catabolism is it's a process where the complex substance are broken down into simpler substance, or a chemical reaction where something is broken down. So it is done with the help of the fungi and the bacteria. They keep on converting the organism into simpler form. So that is called as catabolism. It happens when the body is present on the surface of the earth. So they are being acted upon by the fungus and the bacteria, and they perform catabolism. Then fourth is humification. Humification is the process of formation of humus. And what is humus? Humus is a amorphous. Humus is amorphous substance. Morph means form. Means which do not have any form. So it does not have any form, any structure. So it is a black powdery mass basically. It is a black powdery mass. And the formation of this humus is called humification. Again, it is brought about by the bacteria and the fungi, and so it is further decomposed. Then comes the mineralization. Mineralization is the final step where the components are finally converted into minerals, and this step, each one of these steps are carried by the decomposers, and all of them are working with different pace depending upon the composition of the organism. If the organism is made up of simple substance like nitrogen and the sugar and simple carbohydrate, they get decomposed very quickly. Whereas if they are made of substance like lignin and chitin, tannin and resins, so they take a lot of time. So the rate of decomposition is different within an organism. Suppose there is a dead animal, so you know that the bones and the teeth will be decomposed later on, but the soft tissues are decomposed earlier. So within an animal, all these steps would be happening but at different pace because of the different composition of the animal. So this particular topic I am finishing in this video, and my next video will have the decomposition process beginning from somewhere from here, and then we'll continue with the chapter. Okay, so humus is a amorphous black powder. Amorphous is, you all know that it is external structure. Means doesn't have, so anything which does not have any external structure, it's like a powdery, black powdery mass. So that humus is formed, and humus is not available readily for the plant, so it is being acted upon by a lot of bacteria and the fungi, and they keep on decomposing it and takes a lot of time. Mineralization is a process where the components which are present in the dead organism are finally converted into minerals, and they are available to the plants when they absorb water. Along with that, these minerals also get dissolved in them, and the plants are able to absorb them. So these 5 are the steps of the decomposition, and you know, all these 5 steps are taking place at the same time in an organism. Some part must be undergoing fragmentation, some humification, some mineralization, some catabolism, depending upon the composition of the organism. It's not necessary that each and every part is uniformly decomposed by the bacteria and the fungi or by the decomposers. They are decomposed in different rates depending upon what that particular part of the organism is made up of. So there are factors which control the process of decomposition. Now, what are the factors that controls the decomposition process? One of them is the composition of the dead organism. If it consists of lots of nitrogen, if it consists of lots of sugar, then it is very easily and quickly decomposed by the organisms. But if it is made up of chitin, if it is made up of lignin, then it's going to take a lot of time. So it depends upon the composition. Then it also depends upon the pH of the area. It also depends upon the temperature of the area, and it also depends upon the moisture of that particular area. Temperature has to be high, humidity has to be high, and the pH should be wherein the bacteria and the fungi can survive comfortably and grow. So these are the factors which control the rate of decomposition. Okay, so that is the second step which we have completed. Now we move on to the third one, that is the energy flow. Now energy flow, we all know that whenever one organism eats another organism, there is flow of energy, and in class 10th you have already read about the 10% law. So let us study that. Energy flow is totally dependent upon the food chain. And what is a food chain? Food chain is the sequence of organisms where one is eaten up by other and is also eaten up by other organisms. That is what we call food chain. It's a sequence of organism where one organism is eaten up by the other organism. And a very simple type of food chain we can take is the you can say the grass. Grass is eaten up by, let us say, deer. Deer is eaten up by lion. You all know about it. It's the most simple type of food chain which exists in nature. Now grass, you all know that it is a producer. It is a producer. Deer is a consumer, and it is what kind of consumer? It is primary consumer. It is a primary consumer, and we also call it as herbivore. Another name for it is secondary producer. I hope you remember this particular term we studied when we started the chapter. So it can be called as a primary consumer, it can be called as a herbivore, or it can be called as a secondary producer. Now when we move ahead, this line is also consumer, but this is going to be a secondary consumer, or what we can say, like here it is herbivore, it is called as carnivore, and corresponding to the secondary producer we are going to call it as tertiary producer. Tertiary producer. So this is how the food chain is which exists in nature, and this type of food chain which starts with producer is called as grazing food chain, or we also call it as GFC, grazing food chain. That is most common in nature. Now this particular food chain which exists in nature have got producers, have got consumers, primary consumers, secondary consumer, but the number of the members in a particular food chain can be more than 3. So we call them tertiary consumer, we call them carnivore, omnivore, there are terms associated with that. Each level, this is first level, this is second level, this is third level. Each level of the food chain is called trophic level. It is called trophic level, or we can say the steps of food chain. The steps of food chain is called trophic level. So this is the first trophic level, this is second trophic level, this is third trophic level. But what we observe in nature is that these food chains, they do not exist all alone. They cannot exist all alone. For example, here in this particular food chain, if I remove all the deer, what is going to happen? The lion will die, and the grass, they will all grow. There will be a lot of competition. Since they are not being eaten up, gradually they will also die. If I remove all the lion, then the number of the deer will increase. The deer will feed upon the grass will disappear, and ultimately the food chain will be destroyed, and the life on the earth would become extinct. So in order to make it happen, there is another concept which is accepted by the nature, and we call it as food web. We call it as food web. Food web is where a large number of food chains are connected to each other. Like grass eaten up by zebra. Zebra is also eaten up by lion. Then we have, you can name any herbivore. It can be goat, which is also eaten up by lion. Then zebra or deer and goat, they may also be eaten up by carnivore like hyena, or maybe by wolf, and so on. So therefore, there is a interconnection between a lot of food chain, and that interconnected network of food chain is what we call the food web. That is called food web, and food webs are more stable. They are more stable. Why they are more stable? We take the first example once again. Like suppose I remove deer from here, then the lion will not die because it can eat zebra, it can eat goat. So other alternative food are also available, so it can survive on the other members, and thus the continuity of the life will be maintained on the earth's surface. So food web are more stable as compared to the food chain. That is number one. Now try to make a food chain having maximum number of organisms in it, and you will find that you won't be able to try to make at least 3 food chain with maximum number of members in it, and then tell me how many members are there in each food chain. You should make a chain of maximum organism. So this is the food chain. Now let us talk about the energy flow. We have already read the 10% law. The 10% law, and according to the 10% law, when one organism is eaten up by the other organism, it is only the 10% of energy which is passed on to them. Suppose it has got 1000 joules of energy, so in the deer it is only the 100 joule that will pass on. From the deer again 10% of energy will go to the lion, and that amounts to 10 joule. So at every level, the number of the amount of the energy is reduced, and since the amount of the energy is reduced, that is why the number of the organism in a food chain is less, because the last member will not get enough energy to survive, because it keeps on decreasing at every level. So 10% law and the movement of the energy from one level to another level. Now if we make this entire food chain in graphical form, then we call those graphs as pyramids. We call all those graphs as pyramids. The food chain that we studied was the grazing food chain, GFC. There is one more food chain which exists, and that is called as DFC. It is called detritus food chain, and detritus food chain are the one detrites are the dead organism. So detritus food chain, it starts with a dead organism, and the organism which feed upon dead organism is called detrivores. They are called detrivores. You all are aware about herbivores, carnivores, omnivores. So add on one more word in your dictionary, and that is detrivores, which feed upon the dead. And you can see, you can say that it is the hawk, the vultures, the earthworm, the wood louse. They all come in that category. So DFC starts with this particular chain starts with the dead organism. Dead organism. There we also have decomposers, and these dead organisms may be eaten up by earthworm, maybe wood louse, and they in turn are eaten up by birds, and birds in turn are eaten up by snakes. So this is an example of detritus food chain. So in nature there are two food chain only, grazing food chain and the detritus food chain. Okay, so these are the two terms, and the total amount of the biomass which is present at every food at every trophic level has been given a special term, and it is called as standing crop. It is called standing crop. So do write the definition of the standing crop. What does it mean? And read it from the book and write the definition. Now come on to the pyramid. What is pyramid? Pyramids are the graphical representation of the food chain. So you all have read the pyramids. So very quickly we'll revise. There is pyramid of number, there is pyramid of biomass, and there is pyramid of energy. There are three different categories of pyramid. Let us talk about the pyramid of number. I'm going to make a pyramid of number like this. Now here are the producers. Let us take the first example only, the simple most, the grass eaten up by deer, eaten up by lion. You know that the number of the grass in a forest will definitely be more as compared to the deer, and the deer will be more as compared to lion. So this particular trophic level or this particular pyramid very nicely depict the food chain which we have chosen. Now this number, can be inverted also. Inverted in a sense that the producers may be present in less number and the organism which consume them may be present in large number. For example, let us take one tree as a producer. Now on that tree there are a lot of fruits which grow, and those fruits are eaten up by let us say hundreds of birds. One mango tree can feed hundreds of birds. So here this particular pyramid, in this example, it is inverted. So this is an inverted pyramid, and this is the upright pyramid. So in pyramid of number, both types of pyramid exist. It can be inverted or it can be upright. Let us talk about biomass. We'll take the same example, grass, deer, lion. The total biomass of the grass definitely will be more, or the producers will be more than the herbivores, and the herbivores will be more than the lion. You will not find thousands of lion in a forest and just 100 of deer in a forest. It's just the opposite. Number of deer are more than the number of lion. So the biomass also follows this, that it is in the decreasing order upwardly, and the biomass can also be inverted. It can also be inverted. Now the example of the inverted biomass is found in ocean. In ocean, where there are the diatoms which are eaten up by fishes. So if we see the biomass, the diatoms eaten up by the fishes. If we see the biomass of the fishes, it is more, and the biomass of the diatom is less. So there also the inverted pyramid exists in nature, although the examples are very few. If we talk about energy, so we have already studied 10% law, and according to that, the energy keeps on decreasing as we go up in the food chain from one trophic level to another trophic level. So it is upright because the energy keeps on decreasing, and here in the energy pyramid, the pyramid is always upright. You will not find inverted pyramid in energy. An organism having less energy cannot give more energy to the organism of the next level. So the pyramid of energy is always upright. Okay, so this is how the energy flow takes place in the nature. And after this, so I've given you some questions also. You can again watch the video, and you can do the questions which I asked you. So these are the pyramids. Then there are two topics which are left. One of them is called as the succession. First of all, we will take the nutrient cycle. After nutrient cycle, we will take succession, and then we will study about the ecosystem services. What service the ecosystem is giving us. So there are just 1, 2, 3 topics left, which we will continue in the next video. Okay, children. So as I told you earlier that there are 3 topics left. One is the nutrient cycle, then the succession, and the ecosystem. So today we'll study these 3 topics. The first one is the nutrient cycle. Nutrient cycle is also called as biogeochemical cycle. It is basically, nutrient cycle means when the nutrients move from plant to animal, from animal to the other animals, and then back to the environment, that is in the soil and in the air. So there is a cycling of nutrients because they start from the soil and they come back again to the soil. So it is called cycling. Whereas the energy, it is unidirectional because it comes from the sun to the plants, then to the animal, and then it is lost into the environment. It doesn't go back to the sun. So as far as the transfer of energy is concerned, we call it as a unidirectional flow of energy. Whereas in the case of nutrients, we call them cycling of the nutrients because they come back to the place where they have started from. And we also call them biogeochemical cycle because there is movement of chemicals between the geo is earth and bio is living organism. So there is movement of chemicals between the earth and the living organism. So it is also called the biogeochemical cycle. Categorically, there are 2 types of biogeochemical cycle. One of them is called as the gaseous cycle and the other is called as the sedimentary cycle. Gaseous cycle are the one which include the gases, that is oxygen cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the carbon cycle. They all come in the gaseous category, and their reservoir means the place where the maximum amount of these gases are stored. The reservoir is atmosphere only, atmosphere. And here in this case, sedimentary, like the phosphorus cycle, the sulfur cycle, and the main resources, or we can say the main reservoirs are the sediments, or we can say the rock. We can say the rock is there. So we are going to study 2 cycles. One is the gaseous, and in gaseous we will study the carbon cycle, and in the sedimentary we are going to study the phosphorus cycle. So these 2 biogeochemical cycle we are going to study. So first the carbon cycle. You know, carbon, the 71% of the carbon is present in the ocean, and maximum amount, the main reservoir of carbon is atmosphere. But the 71% of carbon is there in the ocean means that they are present in the plants which are present in the ocean. So carbon cycle is a gaseous cycle. I am explaining you the carbon cycle. It is the gaseous cycle, and let us say it starts with a tree. This tree, it takes up carbon dioxide for the purpose of photosynthesis, and it also gives out carbon dioxide during the process of respiration. The animals also gives out carbon dioxide during the process of respiration. So here it is being taken and a small amount is also being released by them. Then the burning of fossil fuels. The burning of fossil fuels as like coal, it can be the kerosene, it can be the petrol. When they are burnt, they add on carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They add on carbon dioxide in atmosphere, and they are also adding up carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Then the industries and the factories, they also add on to the carbon reservoir in the area. And this carbon dioxide present in the atmosphere is taken up by the organisms living in the water bodies. So there are planktons which will use carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, and then this carbon dioxide which is dissolved in water is converted into calcium carbonate, which is converted into the shells of aquatic animals. So here what happens, the shells which are formed, they settle down at the bottom of the pond or the water body, and then they become the you can say the base of the water body, and here the carbon is locked and it is very slowly returned to the atmosphere. The movement is very slow, so there is weathering of these, or the decomposition of these shells, which results in the returning of the carbon dioxide, but the process is very slow. So what is happening here? The carbon dioxide which is present in the atmosphere is taken up by the plants, then there is release of the carbon dioxide by the plant itself, then by the animals, also by the industries, also by the burning of fuel. So everything is adding into the atmosphere. From the atmosphere it goes to the aquatic organism, when they respire, the process, the carbon dioxide, it is returned to the atmosphere. So it keeps on happening that way. And even the decomposition process also releases the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and this decomposition is because of the death of the animals and the death of the plants. So when they die, and after their death there is decomposition, so whatever they have, whatever carbon they have, that is returned back to the atmosphere. And in our body, it's 49% is carbon. So after water, carbon is present in the maximum amount in our body. So when it is returned back to the atmosphere, it replenishes the soil and the environment with the carbon which was locked inside the body of the organism. So this is the carbon cycle. Now move on to the next one, and that is the phosphorus cycle. The phosphorus cycle is very simple, and it is sedimentary cycle. Phosphorus cycle is sedimentary cycle. So what happens? Phosphorus is sedimentary cycle. It is present mostly in the rocks, and when there is weathering of rocks means breaking of rocks naturally. It can be by the acid rain, it can be by the decomposition. When the lichens and other organisms, they grow, they release a certain acid which helps in breaking the rocks. Like usnea is one of the lichen which produces an usnic acid which keep on breaking the rocks. So gradually the breaking of the rocks is called withering. So the withering of the rocks results in the addition of phosphorus inside the soil. So phosphorus become rich in soil because of the withering of the rocks. Then this soil, from the soil, the plants, they take up the phosphorus when they absorb water. So along with that, the phosphorus also goes up in the plants, and the plants, they are all eaten up by the animals or the consumers. So the phosphorus from the plant goes into the animals, and when plants and animal, they die, when they die, then they are being decomposed by the decomposers. So there is decomposition which takes place, and this decomposition adds the phosphorus back into the soil. So it's very simple. From the rock it goes into the soil, from the soil to the plant, from plant to the animal, from animal and plant, when they die, by decomposition it comes back to the soil. So the soil gets replenished again with the phosphorus. So that is the phosphorus cycle. So we are done with this nutrient cycle. Now let us move on to the next topic, and that is succession. It is also very interesting topic, and in this board examination there were questions asked from this particular topic. Succession, let me explain you what does that mean. You must have observed that if there is any vacant plot near your house, initially there are very few plants which are found on them, but if it is left undisturbed over a period of time, maybe after a year or so, you will find lot many herbs and lot many shrubs growing on it. And that there are insects also, there are small animals also which keep coming to that particular area. So that there is a gradual change in the type of the organisms which are present in that area, and they keep on changing with time. So that gradual change in the area of a particular place, because of the changes in the environmental condition, leads to a final stable situation. And whatever is the final situation or the community which is there is called as a climax community. So the entire process of changes which takes place in an area, ultimately resulting into a stable community, is what we call succession. I'll repeat once again. like the forests which are present on the surface of the earth, they have not been planted by human beings. Now we can do that. The process is called silviculture. But initially, whatever forests were present, they were present on their own. So how these forests must have been formed? They have been formed by the process of succession. So succession is a gradual change in the species or community in a particular area with the change in the climatic condition, with the change in the environmental condition, and this keeps on happening till we reach a climax community. Once the climax community is reached, there are hardly any changes. Few changes does happen, but no major change takes place. So you will understand this topic more when we study the process of succession. So succession may involve there are various categories of the succession also. For example, if it is taking place in water, we call them hydroceri, and if it is taking place in the desert, we call it as xeroceri. Now there's a new word which has come, and that is called seri. Seri is the steps of the succession. So when one community is replaced by another one, there is the sequence of changes which happens is what we call seri. And seri, when happening in water, it is called hydroceri. Seri, when happening in desert, it is called xeroceri. So if let us say there is one particular community, step 1, followed by another community, step 2, followed by another community, step 3, step 4, and finally the climax community is formed. So in this case, this entire sequence of communities which are changing one after the other is called seri, and these steps are called as seral stages. So seral stage 1, seral stage 2, seral stage 3, 4 and 5. Finally the climax community is formed. So if it is happening in, so I hope this is understood, hydroceri and the xeroceri. Now there is one more category on the basis of where the succession is taking place. If the succession is taking place in an area which has never been occupied by any other species earlier, then we call it as primary succession. For example, the bare rock, the volcanic eruptions, these are the places which were never occupied by the species earlier. So if the succession is happening in that area, it is called primary succession. And definitely it is going to take more time because it has not been habited by any other species. Then another is called as the secondary succession. Secondary succession takes place in an area which had been occupied by some other species earlier. But because of forest fire, because of floods, because of earthquake, because of n number of reasons, it may be the calamities which wipe out all the living organism from there. Then again when the life starts in that area, it is called secondary succession. Just imagine a situation of forest fire. So in forest fire, everything is burnt, but within a very small span of time, you will find that the roots which are present inside the soil and the seeds which have somehow buried inside the soil, they will start growing after a very small duration of time, and they will again convert that area into forest. Although because the conditions are already available, the soil is available, the nutrients are available only, so they will take their time to adjust, and finally they will establish the particular climax state or climax community very quickly. So secondary succession takes place in an area which has been occupied by some species earlier, but because of some reason they have been wiped out from that area, or they have been removed out from that area. So that takes a very short time. Primary succession takes place a lot of time. It may take place 50 years, it may take place 100 years, it may take place 500 years. So gradually they keep on growing until they reach the stage where there is hardly any change. For example, forest is an example of a climax community. There are producers, there are consumers, there are decomposers, everyone is doing its work. So there are not much change which takes place in the forest. So forest is the stage which we call the climax community, the last stage. And the first stage is called as pioneer stage. And species which are present in the pioneer stage is called pioneer species. They are called pioneer species. So we are going to study one hydroceri and one xeroceri. So let us take an example of hydroceri. Hydroceri, when it is happening inside the water. So inside the water, number 1 stage, there is development. There are spores of the phytoplanktons which may be brought up by the air. So there is development of phytoplanktons. When the phytoplanktons will keep on growing, they will attract the spores of the zooplanktons. So basically in the first stage, the pioneer stage is of planktons. Then after a number of years, what will happen? The planktons will, after living for a certain year, some of them will die, so they will settle down at the bottom here, and there may be spores of the plant which are totally submerged, and they will grow in this particular area. They will grow in this particular area. So the next stage will be of submerged plant. It will be of submerged plant. After that, there may be plants which have the capability of floating. So there will be floating plants which will grow here. And similarly, the death of the submerged plant will further make the pond shallower. Here also it will become more shallow. They will settle down, and the process of decomposition will start. Then it will be occupied by the floating plants. The floating plants will, then occupy the upper surface area, and they will flourish. Once they flourish, they will not allow the sunlight to pass through the water body inside the water. As a result, what will happen? The submerged plant will be replaced mostly by the floating plants. And after this stage, so the submerged plant will disappear and the pond will become more shallower. So it will be occupied by a reed swamp stage. Swamp stage, where there will be plants growing on the edges which have their roots in the soil, and the upper portion in the air, and a part of it inside the water. So that is called the reed swamp stage. So swamp will be formed and the pond will become more shallower. Then the next stage will be the marsh meadow stage. Marsh meadow stage. So this marsh meadow stage will further make the pond more shallower. It will make the plant more shallower, and this is going to help the other plants also, and they will keep on occupying more space in the pond, reducing the amount of the water in it. And gradually, this pond will completely disappear, and it will be occupied by the herbs, then followed by the shrubs, and by the trees. And when all these changes are taking place, the insects, the animals are also attracted to these plants, who feed upon the nectar, who feed upon the pollen grain, who feed upon their parts, maybe the leaves and the stems. So there is a community which will be formed here, or we can say the ecosystem will be